Hey guys, this is Dozey. I have an Enhancement Shaman guide for completing the Artifact Challenge. I'm going to dive right into the fight itself and talk about key points in the challenge that you're going to have to prioritize and watch out for. And then at the end of the video, we will discuss talents and legendaries used and what you guys can do with the possible setups that you guys have. After many attempts, I came to the conclusion that it is best to not hex Seagrin at the start. Too many times I ran into hex DR issues or would accidentally break the hex with AoE and it would be on cooldown for the actual enrage timing, and I'd be out of luck. It's best to just tank Seagrin and hex during enrage or just before you know the enrage will be coming. The first two enrages from Seagrin are predictable. You will also see that I pop all cooldowns at the start because this is the best time to get max possible damage out before the mechanics start causing you to run all over. And I find that it is best to get through the first phase because the second phase that has the Farseer casting Ancient Knowledge and the Valkyrie charging back and forth seems to be a bit easier and just requires a little setup of cooldowns and positions to finish the fight. As soon as you see the Jarl move towards you at the beginning of the game, that is because he's going to enrage. This is a good time to drop your cap totem to stun both the Jarl and to allow you to get max damage out before you have to start kiting. At the end of the cap stun on the Jarl, you can go ahead and drop your slow and begin kiting. This allows you to have enough time to both kite the Jarl and to hex Seagrin, because it is shortly after the Jarl's enrage that Seagrin will enrage, and you can go ahead and avoid this by hexing her just before it. And this also gives you time to be able to kite and to pick up the runes on the ground, and then as soon as you go for the second or third rune, the Jarl should be out of the enrage and you can continue the fight on the other two. The things that you have to master during the first phase is the runes that spawn on the ground, Seagrin's enrage, the Jarl's enrage, and the Jarl's Bladestorm. Once you get these down, you can blow through the first phase, and the second phase comes down to just the Valkyrie and the Ancient Knowledge cast from the Farseer. As soon as the Farseer starts casting Ancient Knowledge, he puts up a barrier. You are unable to interrupt his cast until you break the barrier. Now what I've learned, especially later on into the second phase, when he starts casting Ancient Knowledge a lot, it is best to let him get towards the end of his cast, even after you've broken the barrier, to give you more time to not have to worry about anything because you've already broken the shield. The best counter for the Jarl's Bladestorm that I have found is the cap stun. As soon as you see the words in the chat, or you see his animations and you know he's going to Bladestorm, go ahead and preemptively drop cap stun. This will both stop the Bladestorm and allow you to continue your damage. In this scenario, I thought that Seagrin was going to enrage, and so I started to cast Hex. My Hex did not work. Fortunately, she was in the cap stun when she went to enrage, and she didn't actually enrage. That is another thing you can do, is cap stun does stun Seagrin and does prevent her from her enrage if you do it before she finishes the cast. Just a quick tip, the Felfire on the ground does hurt you if you stand in it, but it is not as large as the radius that is appeared on the ground by the animations. If you look at your raid style party frames, you can see when you're taking the debuff damage from it from the little sword icon on the bottom left hand corner. If you position yourself right on the edge of the Felfire where you can still hit the Farseer and not take the damage, you'll be a-okay. Right here you will see that both the Valkyrie appear, the runes appear, and the Jarl will enrage all at the same time, and I handle this by moving to the rune that is closest to the gap in the Valkyrie's path, and then I stun the Jarl. I then position myself to get a good hex on Seagrin, because it is always shortly after Jarl's second enrage that Seagrin will enrage, so if you go ahead and preemptively hex, you won't have to do that while running from the Jarl, and you can position yourself to a good spot for the enrage. Keep in mind that your wolves do AoE damage. So if you ever have them popped and you run by Seagrin while she's hexed at any point, maybe to get runes or something else, it will break the hex. So in some circumstances where I had them popped and I did see runes behind or near the hex, and I knew I had to run by her, I would go ahead and right click off the wolves so that I did not break the hex. Right here you will see that we're moving towards the end of the first phase. Sigrun tries to enrage while in the hex, which prevents that. And then right when the Jarl goes to do Blade Storm, I get a good capstun on him, allowing me to go right back to doing damage. As soon as you're out of the first phase, the only things you have to focus on is saving what cooldowns you do have for the Ancient Knowledge casts and avoiding the Valkyrie. During the second phase, you want to try and keep the 3 of them towards the middle, because the Valkyrie will spawn so often you don't want to have to run very far for the gap, especially during an Ancient Knowledge cast, because you have very limited time to try and break the shield to interrupt the cast, and if you're running one side to the other side and you're unable to do damage to actually break the shield, you're going to lose the game. The second phase is very rinse and repeat. You just have to focus on staying in the gap, constantly watching the Fellfire to make sure you kind of kite the Farseer away from it anytime he's not casting, because when he starts casting Ancient Knowledge, you cannot make him move. And so if he's standing covered in Fellfire, it is really unfortunate for you. So make sure you're constantly kind of kiting them around the middle and getting him to not stand in it as much as possible. Watch for the gaps and save a couple of cooldowns for every single Ancient Knowledge cast, if at all possible. Again, you will see that I let him cast Ancient Knowledge long after I break the shield. This is because the more time that he's casting it before I interrupt, the less time I have to worry about him starting to cast a second one. This gives me more time to focus on other things and not have to worry. Right here you'll see that I mess up. I think that I'm in the gap, but I'm clearly not. Now this is a good example that you don't always lose if you mess up. So if you do mess up, just make sure you heal yourself back up to full really fast. Make sure if you have wall available, you use it, and make sure you don't die to some other mechanic. And do not let it get to your head. Just focus on avoiding the next one, because if you watch most videos, most people, they do mess up at least once. It's human error, it's going to happen. Just don't let it mess you up for the rest of the game. So the Jarl will always die first because they have a shared health pool and he has the lower amount of health out of the three of them. And then as soon as you get the Farseer to about 8% life, the fight ends and you've completed the challenge. Right here at the end, you'll see I get real low, I see the opening, I move towards it. Just to make sure I don't lose to some random mechanic, I pressed wall because I was so close and I did not want to lose on that one flight path. And right there you'll see I completed it, and it's GG's. So my talent choices included Boulder Fist, Rainfall, Lightning Surge, Ancestral Swiftness, Tempest, Crushing Storms, and Landslide. Boulder Fist is a strong choice for this fight just because of the 5% damage buff, the 10-yard range, and the extra damage it does. There's many times when you have to kite Jarl or kite around the Fellfire, and the range damage on this, the extra Maelstrom, and the pure damage it puts out is big help. Rainfall is a must, it's really not optional here because the passive healing it puts out, especially if you don't have the legendary legs for the healing, is a must. So make sure you take Rainfall, you put it down in good situations, and you are Storm Striking and Lava Lashing to keep it up. Both Lightning Surge and Earth Grab are viable here. Some people choose Earth Grab instead of Lightning Surge just because they find it's kind of difficult to kite after the stun, and Earth Grab provides a slow and lasts 3 seconds longer than the stun. However, I don't think it's that difficult to kite after the stun, and I find the stun being so useful to stun the Blade Storm to be too good. Ancestral Swiftness just feels the best in this 4th tier because Hailstorm having to apply the buff constantly, and with all the running around and the extra global, it does not feel strong. But Ancestral Swiftness giving you that passive haze, it doesn't cost you the global, especially when you're cutting around constantly. It feels very strong. Tempest is pretty much a must here. Overcharge is okay. I tried using it for a few fights. I thought maybe the extra damage it would put out and the guaranteed damage I would get during the Ancient Knowledge cast would be strong. But you get way too many Tempest procs, and I just found that was just the pure output damage and the pure procs that I got. It was just better. In the 6th tier, I really liked Crushing Storms. I found it to be the best out of the 3 options here. In PvP I use Sundering a lot, but I did not find Sundering that useful here. One, because of the longer cooldown, so it wasn't up for all the Ancient Knowledge cast towards the end. And second, it was an extra global that didn't always hit super hard. I found Crushing Storms was always there, passive damage, they all have a shared health pool, so that AoE damage is being shared amongst the 3 of them. And then on top of that, it's not an extra ability, it's just part of my normal rotation, so that felt really strong. And then last but not least here we have Landslide. I chose this talent out of the 3 options. One, Ascendance is too long of a cooldown that you'll miss majority of the fight if you use it, and the passive damage from Landslide is just way better than Ascendance throughout the whole fight. Earthen Spike was another option. I thought maybe if I used Earthen Spike with Overcharge during the Ancient Knowledge cast that damage would break the shields. That did not hold true, however, and I just found that just the pure Tempest Storm Strike procs with Landslide, with the Ancestral Swiftness, was just better. It was more reliable, believe it or not, and that's how I ended up doing the last 3 or 4 rounds there before I completed the match. As far as gear, legendaries, and pots and potions and all that goes, I do not normally PvE, I PvP, so all of my gear has versatility on it, which is not optimal for PvE, but what I've learned is this fight is not so much a DPS check as it is mechanic and awareness. I know I tried doing the challenge when I had like 885 item level when it first came out, and I failed miserably. Having better gear to burn through the first phase a little faster to get into the second phase does help a lot, and does help with breaking the shield, but it's not that big of a deal. You'll see it in the video. I did not use any pots, potions, or food. All I did was go in with my best talent choices that I thought were viable, and the gear that I had, and I just watched for the mechanics, and that's how I managed to complete it. And you guys can do the same thing. The only things I can really recommend is if you have Prioritization, use it. If you have the legendary legs, I will butcher the name if I try and say it, but if you have them, they heal you if you stand still passively. That works very, very well with Rainfall. The biggest thing for me was training myself to not move, because I'm so used to just kind of running back and forth. So not moving with the legendary legs with Rainfall is super, super, super strong. And if you have Prioritization, even better. I had a legendary resto piece as well as the legendary legs, and so the resto piece obviously didn't do me a whole lot of good other than giving me a better item level and some better stats. But that's all I had available, so I completed it in that way. Again, if you have optimal gear, if you have Prioritization and the legs, or you have some, I would say stay away from AoE legendaries, because I did have one AoE legendary and it kept breaking Seagrin out of hexes, and that's not what you want, clearly. So anything you have that's single target, but if you have Prioritization or you have the legendary legs, one or the other, great. If you have both, great. But I really recommend using one of those if you have them. Again, if you do not have either one of those, you can still complete it. Just make sure you're using Rainfall as much as possible, and you're going to have to throw some healing surges in there a little more often than you would if you didn't have them. But it is still very doable. Just watch out for the mechanics and try to take as least amount of damage as possible. But there are some times when you will be tanking all 3 of them, and you just really can't avoid it. Thank you so much for watching. If this helped you in any way, please give a like and thumbs up, and watch out for any more content that come out. I'm going to be attempting the Elliot one, and then shortly after that the Resto one, as I get time and some practice. Thank you.